Okay, welcome to the Belvedere, City of Belvedere Committee of the Whole meeting. We'll have the clerk call the roll, please.
Brereton,
Here.
Flurry,
Present.
Frank, Freeman,
Here.
McGee,
Here.
Mulhall,
Present.
Porter,
Here.
Prather,
Here.
Snow,
Here.
Stevens,
Here.
10 present.
Thank you. Under public comment, we have one public comment tonight. Welcome Brandlin Peck. If you would come to the podium, please. It's over on the other side.
Hello, everybody.
That's
I have something wrote out.
That's okay. Take a minute.
Okay.
Is that microphone? Okay. Go ahead. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me. Hey, this is my son Jameson. He's 3 years old. He is diagnosed with bilateral optic nerve hypoplasia. It is where the nerves in both of his eyes did not develop correctly. So there's nothing to help him. He can't see but 2 inches away from his face. What did it have? Glasses don't help anything. Jameson is also diagnosed with autism, so teaching him dangers and rules are a lot harder. Yeah. I'm coming to my community that I grew up in, feeling safe as a child, and asking for signs. Sorry, you guys, because I can't handle thinking about my child walking out in the street and people not knowing that he might not see their car. And he doesn't understand, like, what it means to be hurt. Like, he hurts his brother, and he doesn't get that it's hurting him, you know. He's only 3, and it's very hard to explain things. We're going through early development in school, working on teaching him dangers and that it's not okay to go on the street to get a ball. But he also doesn't know the difference between where the sidewalk is and where the street is. He doesn't know if that car is coming towards him or sitting still. I grew up in that neighborhood. My mother lives over around the corner on Pleasant Street. My whole life growing up, I've watched cars fly through the intersections. I've heard semis slam on their brakes because they don't know that there's a sign there. They've actually shook in my mother's house. That's why I'm asking for 2 signs specifically, for one for her street and one for mine. Like I said, we are working on teaching him this. There is a fence in our backyard, but he's 3 and he will eventually figure out how to use that and unlock it and get out. Let's see. And I don't know if you guys know where Warren and Pleasant is. We have Dean's in the back behind us and Green Giant just a few blocks away. There's constant traffic on both of those streets all day long. Semis and vehicles going to and from work.
I have to go pee.
Okay, you'll have to wait just a second.
Is there a bathroom here?
Probably. Just hold on, okay?
To ask them?
Yeah, I have to finish talking, okay? And just to, I don't know if you guys can really see how he is, but one example is, last week we had an appointment, so we decided to do something fun afterwards and took him to do bumper boats. The second we got out of the pool, I was trying to help my other 2 kids out, and he was just 2 inches away from the pool. If I wouldn't have turned around in that second, he would have been in that water. So it's a very big thing to me and my family. We've never had to deal with anything like this. I only know about signs because I grew up and I babysat a little girl who was deaf. And my whole time growing up, she had signs that said deaf child area to tell people, hey, my daughter might not hear. And it's just, I feel like people really need to be aware because he can't be aware for himself. And I do try my best to keep my eye on him 24/7, but I'm sure all of you have children and know within 2 seconds anything can happen. I think that's it. Thank you guys.
Okay, thank,
Is there a bathroom?
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brandolyn.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Okay, under public forum, we have none. Reports of officers, boards, and special committees. Item number 1, Public Works Unfinished Business, Stormwater Utility Implementation Phasing. I believe we're gonna leave that on the table. So, did you have any comment on that, Attorney Durella? Okay. Item number 2, Public Works. Brent, any update?
Quick update besides what's on the agenda for tonight. On the street side of things, our Appleton Road widening project has been granted STBG funds through the Region 1 Planning Council. My understanding is the award is in the neighborhood of $2 million and that we will have 3 years to expend those grant funds. Further details will be forthcoming once we receive our grant award letter. Just a footnote, we had applied for $4.8 million of STBG funds. So our what we asked for, what we got are 2 different numbers, and I'll have the complete details of what those costs are. So we will have to take a look at that project as we go forward. I should have that information back for our June Public Works meeting, if not our next committee meeting. On the water side, we have successfully auctioned off our 1997 New Holland backhoe. The unit sold for $13,100 and the money credited to the Water Department depreciation. The Water Department Depreciation Fund. This backhoe was authorized for sale by council when we replaced it with a new John Deere backhoe for the Water Department back in 2017. And that's all I have for update.
Okay, thank you, Brent. We'll go to item number B then, Warren Avenue and East Pleasant Street enforcement signs. And this is in regards, this was brought to us by Alderwoman Frank and on behalf of Brandolyn Peck. I don't know if anybody has any comment. Alderman Frank?
I would just like to add that area, when there's a train coming, that a lot of people try to speed up to go through there on both ways. So I think it still is a hazard for this little child. So I'd like to make a motion that we do the signs on East Pleasant and Warren Avenue.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Motion on the floor, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Alderman Stevens? Discussion, any other discussion? Brent, I'm sure what you have to say here will be,
Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad, included in your packet is correspondence from Illinois Department of Transportation, and this basically comes from the Federal Highway Administration, in the fact that children warning signs should not be used. And if you read through the memo, it gives the one, but it includes children at play, blind child, deaf child, autistic child. All of those signs are no longer recommended for installation, and it's been quite a while, probably since 2011 that I can recall anyway, that we haven't placed any of those signs out in the public. There's still maybe signs, I think there's still signs out there, but they have been there prior to the 2011 date. So again, it's up to council, but recommendation from Public Works would be to follow the requirements or the recommendations from IDOT and FHWA as far as sign placements.
okay, Alderman Porter?
Well, I have to say that I totally disagree with this memo from the state of Illinois. I think the more children playing signs that we can get out there just reminds people of the need to watch their speed in town here. So, you know, I'm all for putting them out there and just reminding motorists that they need to watch out, because some people nowadays, with all the distractions, cell phones and that type of thing, I think some people just forget about that type of thing, you know, so.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Alderman Fleury.
So I see from the memo it says the signs are no longer recommended, but is there another alternative or something that would be helpful or beneficial in this case?
Well, the sign itself, if you read through the memo, it indicates the signs, they provide no guidance to the motorist as to a safe speed, or a sign has no legal basis for determining what a motorist should do. So that's one of the issues you have. One of the things that has been done in Belvedere since this date is we took our speed limits are automatically set at 30 miles per hour, and that's marked otherwise, and we took the step of all residential streets being posted at 25 miles an hour. So we did reduce the speed limit on all our residential streets to 25 miles an hour unless posted otherwise. So that step has been taken.
Alderwoman Freeman.
Thank you, Your Honor. I know that I read through the IDOT thing, and I also disagree with it. I know that children at play signs maybe go unnoticed because there's children at play on every street in this town. But when I'm driving and I see a specific sign that says blind child, deaf child, I absolutely heighten my senses and become a little bit more aware that there may be a child that I need to be watching out for. I think that they're helpful.
Thank you. Alderwoman Mulhall.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree 100%. If I see one of those signs, I am slowing down. I'm looking closer at the sidewalks and by cars. I appreciate the input from them, but I personally think they're effective.
Attorney Drella.
Brent, the motion was to place signs. Do you need further direction on what signs, if the council elects to go forward, that you're going to post, or do you pretty much know what you need to do?
Well, they talk about both streets, so I'm assuming we're talking about 4 signs. I'm assuming that they're going to be, the blind child sign would be the sign to do. I'll have to check with our suppliers to get those made up, again, because they're not made like they used to be as far as with a standard. So I believe we can still get them, so we'll get them properly sized. I will need, or would like to request the property owner to submit their information to us so we can keep that on file, and also to advise them that if they were to move or relocate, we need to know that as well, because once they do that, we need to take those signs down, because they would no longer apply, of course, in that scenario. So that would be my recommendations.
Okay, anybody else? If not, we have a motion and a second then, and just to stipulate, it would be for 4 signs on Warren Avenue and East Pleasant Street. And it will be blind child signs. To be specific, if the person who made the motion agrees with that in a second. Okay. All right, all those in favor will, when their name is called, answer yes. All those opposed, no.
Actually, can we just take
You want
a,
a voice vote?
Sure.
we haven't done this in forever.
Everybody's here. We can do a voice vote.
All right, we'll have a voice vote.
All those that agree?
Any opposed?
Okay.
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is item C. Item C, high water usage at 1418 9th Avenue. We've all read this information. Do we have a motion? Actually, I'm going to let Brent. Brent, you better tell us
Thank you, Your
the
Honor.
rest of the story.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. A memo in your packets. Received request from the property owner's son for consideration of a high water bill for 1418 9th Avenue in the amount of $4,389.58 with a breakdown of the water and sewer shown there. The high usage was a result of a pipe bursting in the basement. The property owner had moved to an assisted living facility and the house was vacant when the leak occurred. The leak was discovered by his son while picking up the mail. I did meet with Jay White, the son of the property owner, at the residence. Observed they did have a floor drain in the basement as well as a sump pump drain. The maximum depth of the water in the basement reached about 8 inches. It appears from where the leak occurred, the majority of the water went to the sump pump. The floor drain had some lint buildup and others, so it was reduced even further. But based on the fact that the water did back up in the basement, at least a portion of the water did go down the floor drain, which is into the sanitary sewer system. Therefore, I would recommend that the sewer portion of the bill be reduced by 75% to $669.51, which would leave a total bill due of $2,381.03. We will work with the property owner to establish a payment plan to resolve this balance due. In further discussions with the son, he will probably be putting up the property for sale in the not too distant future once he gets it cleaned up and ready to go. So whatever payment arrangement we make with him will also include a requirement that the balance be paid in full prior to sale.
Okay. Do we have a motion to that effect? And to be explicit, then the water portion of that bill is $1711.52. The sewer portion of that bill will be reduced by 75% to $669.51. So the motion would be for a total of $2381.03. We have a motion to that effect?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Alderman
I'll
Snow.
second it.
Second by Alderman Stevens. Any discussion? Alderwoman Franks?
Thank you, Mayor. Brent, did that have the alert system where when it uses a lot of water that it automatically calls you and you shut it off?
No, it does not. It has a remote reader, but it does not have a smart point. The smart point's needed for that two-way communication. So we have an appointment actually this Thursday to rewire the basement to allow for that smart point installation. As part of the cleanup activities from the water, they were gutting out some of the finished portion of the basement. So that work has been done, so it gives us access that we need to get the wiring and stuff done. So that will be done on Thursday.
Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Snow?
Along those same lines, where are we with having the bulk of the city having those meters that can have that information?
We've got about probably right around 1,000 residences left that has to have the smart point put on. When COVID came out, we basically stopped doing any and all. We have since, probably in the last month or so, started doing installations. So we're, on average, we do one to three installations per day, as long as we can get them scheduled. And these are the last ones. These are the most difficult ones. These are the ones that require the wiring to go through. And the biggest obstacle, honestly, we have is scheduling time when people are available. With both parents working or out of the house, it's really, really hard these days to get a time that we can get there to do the work.
Alderman Snow?
And along those lines, would it be prudent for us to allow for some kind of overtime or weekend activity rescheduling in order to have guys that can facilitate doing it on the weekend?
We are already doing that. We'll do them on Saturdays if needed.
Anybody else? Anything else? If not, we have a motion and a second on the floor then for 1418 9th Avenue to reduce the total bill to the amount of $2,381.03. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Brent, the fast sampling,
Yeah, next up is our fast sampling. We talked previously at meetings about the fast requirements that we are looking at now. And attached to the proposal memo in your packet was a proposal we received from PDC Laboratories for the first 2 rounds of fast sampling for well number 3 and well number 4 as requested. After these first 2 rounds of sampling, IEPA will review those results and let us know if any changes to the sampling are needed. In addition, well 5 has been shut off since the time that the EPA did their initial sampling. They have not got that initial sample for well 5 yet. Hopefully well 5 will be back up and running in the next couple of weeks, and once that happens, we will get those results to see if 5 qualifies or doesn't qualify for this program. I would recommend approval of the proposal from PDC Laboratories in the amount of $2,700 for the fast sampling of well 3 and well 4. This work will be paid for from Water Department line item 6158106812.
thank you. Do we have a motion to that effect?
I'll make the motion, Your Honor.
Motion by Alderman Stevens, second by Alderman Porter. Any other discussion? Alderwoman Freeman?
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Brent, back on April 7th, it said the IEPA has notified the city that all the other wells were within their current guidelines levels, but that well number 3 had exceeded it and was taken, at that time we took it offline, and then they wanted us to perform additional sampling. So I have a couple questions, I guess. Did they pay for the initial sampling and now they're telling us that we have to pay for the rest?
Correct.
Okay, and then is well number 3 still offline, or did we remedy that, and how did we remedy that?
No, there's no remedies have been done. Well 3 is offline and will remain offline, at least in the near term until we determine what the FAS requirements are, as far as there's several options out there for remediation for FAS. They're all expensive, and there's questions on the effectiveness of each one of those. So until probably additional information becomes available as additional entities, or basically everybody's kind of in the same boat right now. This is new for everybody. So there's information and papers and everything being produced on a constant basis right now as far as, well, this effort, or we did this, or reverse osmosis through filtration and using this and using this. So all of that work is being done. There's no clear-cut remedies at this point. So in the near term, well 3 will remain turned off. And fortunately, with our water usage, the way it's trending right now, that should not be an issue for us at this point in time.
Oh, go ahead, Alderwoman.
Thank you. So even with well 4 being taken offline, we're still okay, or well 5? And possibly well 4, they want well 4 tested?
So well 4 had tested positive for FAS. It was present, but it was not present at their recommended levels, above the recommended levels for the IEPA. So because it was a positive test, they still want us to do quarterly sampling, but it's not recommended to be shut off or otherwise like well number 3 is. We don't know about well number 5. As of right now, because of the work we're doing with 4 and 5, yes, 3, 4, and 5 are offline right now.
And, thank you. And then line item 61-5-810-6812 is our lab expenses line item, which for fiscal year 22 we budgeted $30,000, which is $10,000 less than last year. So if we have to keep sampling these wells, are we going to be able to stay in budget on that?
Probably not. We'll probably go over the budget. And the reason why the difference was between this year's every 3 years, I believe, there's a increased amount of testing that we have to do. So every 3 years, our lab expense is higher than the other 2 years. But no, if the 27, if that continues, if 5 say test positive and we have to include that one, then it's going to be tough for us to stay within that line item itself. Now, overall, we can make changes or we can move some funds around to try to remain in balance, which is what we will try to do. But that specific line item will probably overexpend it.
Okay, that's all I had, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Snow?
So Brent, the well itself, when you take these offline for this purpose, do we still run the well to make sure that the pumps are functioning and all that good stuff, so that they don't sit idle and have to be rehabbed because they sat idle?
We would have to pump to discharge. We'll see what transpires. So that may be like a once a month for a short period of time, something to do that routine. But yeah, it would be pumped direct to waste, so it'd be pumped into a storm sewer system.
Alderwoman Frank?
Brent, could you explain why pump number 4 on North Main is still running? Is that because of this testing?
No, pump number 4 is right now, it's in its final superchlorination event. So it was chlorinated for a 24-hour period the end of last week. And so once that, you basically put the chlorination in there, let it cook, if you will, heat up, do its disinfection, and then you have to pump to waste. And then once you pump to waste, you have to get the point to your residuals on the chlorine is within the proper limits, and then you can take a sample to see if it passes the EPA requirements. So that's what you're seeing now at well number 4.
Anybody else? If not, we have a motion and a second then to recommend approval of the proposal from PDC Laboratories in the amount of $2,700 for the fast sampling of well number 3 and 4. And this work will be paid for from the Water Department line item 61-5-810-6812. All those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Thank you. Item E, well number 4 rehab project change order. Brent?
Next up, again, memo in your packet, as we just briefly touched on, well number 4, most of the work there has been completed. They're in the process of doing final chlorination now. Attached to the memo is a change order request. Indicates the original contract amount of $211,119. There was a change in the phosphoric acid to a muriatic acid and additional quantities of chemicals that were needed to maintain the targeted pH level of 3.0 during the disinfection process. That additional cost was $15,735.26. We also replaced 2 8-inch liquid style check valves. One of the 2, when they removed the well from the ground, one of the 2 check valves was stuck open. So based on that and the age, we decided to replace both of them. So that additional cost was $2,966. Therefore, total cost change order is $18,701.26, which is 9% of the original contract amount. I would recommend approval of that change order to Cohoy Pump Service, which will be paid for from the Water System Depreciation Account 0409.
Okay, could we get a motion to that effect?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Alderman Snow, motion. Second, Alderman Stevens. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Item number F, Southwest Tank Rehab Project and bid tabulation. Brent?
Again, the memo in your packet, we opened bids for the Southwest Elevated Tank Rehabilitation, which includes the full abrasive blast and recoating of the exterior of the tank, as well as recoating the interior wet portion of the tank. We received 3 bids, low bid being from LC United in the amount of $478,000, McGuire Iron at $506,000, and Jetco at $771,670. Our budget for the tank rehabilitation was $440,000, of which we spent $17,420 for the replacement of the expansion joint, which has been completed, which leaves us $422,580 in the budget. Both the low bidder and the second low bidder cannot fulfill our responsible bidder requirements included in the project bid documents, and therefore they are considered unresponsive. We basically have two options. We can reject all the bids and rebid the project this fall with work to be done in the spring. Or as an option, second option, we could waive the bidding requirements for this project and negotiate with Jetco directly to complete the project. Waiving of the bidding requirements would require a 2/3 majority vote of the city council. And if we went down that, took that option, the painting work would still not be done till spring. Spring is the best time to paint water towers, and the painting contractor schedules are pretty well booked up now for this balance of this construction season. So no matter which option we choose, the work would be done next spring. It'd be my recommendation that we go ahead and waive the bidding process in this case and negotiate with Jetco. If we can negotiate with Jetco to get an acceptable price, we can go ahead and proceed down that path. If we negotiate and we can't come to a reasonable price, then we can still always reject the bids and rebid the project in the fall.
And it appears that Jetco is the only one that actually met the bid requirements anyhow, correct?
Correct. And they are the ones actually that were the low bidder for the valve replacement earlier. That's already been done.
So do we have a motion to that effect? And we'll have discussion if we can get a motion in a second to go ahead and waive the bidding requirements and for this project and negotiate with Jetco directly to complete the project. We get a motion to that effect? Motion by Alderman Fleury,
I'll second that.
second by Alderman Stevens. Discussion. Alderman
Mayor, I
Franks.
just had a question. Is this the one on Newburgh?
Yes, the southwest tank on Newburgh. It's the buck tower, if you will.
Did we talk about that last year?
Yes, we had through the budget process and the work contemplated that needed to be done there, and the engineering that had to be done to develop the plans and specifications for that project.
Okay, thank you. I just thought it sounded familiar.
Thank you. Alderman Snow?
And do we need to put a max limit on dollar amount for this so that you know where we're going to be comfortable? Because I'm assuming once you negotiate, it's going to come back to us or not at all.
The plan would be to negotiate with the contractor. I spoke with Jetco earlier today. They indicated that if council went that direction, he'd sharpen his pencil and give me some numbers. And then I would, whatever he submits to us for a final version of number that he's satisfied with, I will bring that back to committee for review and action.
Brent, is there a reason that it may be in our advantage then to go ahead and do that with Jetco potentially filling this in, more at their schedule so that they could potentially lower their bid?
By all means, the indication was that if they could schedule this for spring of next year, that would be most advantageous to them and therefore advantageous to us price-wise.
Okay, thank you. Attorney Drella?
Brent, I kind of assumed you were going to bring this back to council next week. You think it may be longer than that?
I will advise Jetco tomorrow of council's action tonight, and we'll see if we can get that all wrapped up by next Monday night. That would be wonderful, and proceed accordingly. But I don't know if that's going to happen or not.
So I suppose where we'll be at, assuming the motion passes this evening as introduced, is there will be one motion on the council agenda to reject all of the bids. And then we're ready to move forward with considering the revised agreement. At that point, there'd be a motion to waive the bidding requirements and then a subsequent motion to approve the contracts. So there's actually going to be 3 separate motions that will appear before the city council on this matter, at least one of which will be next week, and then we'll deal with the motion to waive and the motion to approve when Brent's ready with the contract.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? All right, then we have a motion to waive the bidding requirements for this project and negotiate with Jetco directly to complete it. All those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passed. We're just blazing through these, aren't we? Item G, Brent, 2018 wastewater treatment improvement project.
Change order. Good news for us, a copy of which was attached in your packet. We received a letter from the IEPA advising us that our loan agreement is being modified so that they can forgive principal forgiveness in the amount of $621,892.50. So it's basically a grant, if you will, to the city of Belvedere for this particular project. When we received our original loan agreement, it was indicated that we qualified for principal forgiveness, but they did not have sufficient funds to provide us with any. So with this amendment, we will have that forgiveness in the stated amount. Therefore, I would recommend approval of the amended loan agreement for loan number L173623 and authorize the mayor to sign the amendment.
Motion by Alderman Snow, second by Alderman Porter. Any other discussion? Alderwoman Franks?
Brent, what are the special conditions of the loan as amended? That last paragraph, the last sentence?
So that's just basically saying that the provisions of the loan agreement that we've already signed are still applicable. The only difference is that we will be receiving principal forgiveness in the amount of $621,892.50. So in other words, what's going to happen when the project is all done, as you know, as part of approval of this project, we are paying for it through the EPA loan program. And through that loan program, then we have loan amounts due, and we have to do a rate increase on the sanitary sewer side to make those loan payments. So this 621 will be applied to the outstanding balance of that project, therefore reducing the total amount of the rate increase that we would normally otherwise have to do to pay for it.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Freeman?
Thank you. So could you this is the loan we just did in this year's budget, but can you remind us of the initial amount?
The initial amount of, whoa, now you're gonna go my memory. The original project cost was 4.6 million, I believe, is what the original amount was, I want to say.
Anybody else? If not, all those in favor of the loan amended for L173623 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Item H, VFW Force Main Project bid tabulation. Brent?
Again, memo in your packet, we opened bids for the VFW Force Main Extension Project. This is the project that we've had to rebid due to the failure for Apollo contractors of completing the work the first time around. We received 3 bids, the low bid being from Sega Ag Works in the amount of $300,000. I would recommend approval of the low bid from Sega Ag Works in the amount of $300,000 to complete the VFW Force Main Extension Project. This work will be paid for from the Sewer Depreciation Fund 0608. I would add that we are still in the process of checking references for this contractor. We have confirmed that they've met all the requirements for the responsible bidder affidavit, but we're still checking on their work history. And I have not yet been able to reach them directly and talk to them about the project and get their feeling on how they're going to complete the project. So as of right now, my recommendation would be to approve the low bid. That may or may not change come time for council, but as of right now, that would be my recommendation. And just note that the $300,000 is actually cheaper than Apollo's original bid last year for the same project.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion and second to that? Motion by Alderman Fleury, second by Alderman Porter. Any other further discussion? Alderwoman Freeman?
Thank you. So, Brent, I called and spoke to you about this today. But I'm just going to reiterate kind of our conversation for the benefit of people at home and the council. I asked if this new people were aware of the issues that Apollo had, and you indicated that, yeah, you had filled them in on the sediment drilling issues.
Yeah, so we took the information that we had gathered, or that was apparent from the first time around, and the issues that Apollo had raised and actually encountered, and we modified, updated the bid documents to reflect the fact that Cabo was encountered, and the ground conditions that we knew of, and that information was provided in the bid, so that the bidders this time around had that information available to them.
Okay. Anybody else? If not, all those in favor of approving the low bid from Sega Works in the amount of $300,000 will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Thank you. Item I, sale of the sludge trailer from the wastewater treatment plant. Brent?
Thank you, Your Honor. Memo in the packet. We received 3 bids for the sale of our 1974 Penco sludge trailer. As you recall, this is the trailer that basically broke apart with the axle and assembly basically coming apart from the frame and the tank. And authorization was provided. Council authorized us to, we purchased 2 replacement tankers. We did have a 1968 and 1974 trailer. This 1974 is before you tonight. 1968 trailer we're using as a spare, as a backup unit, and we have both the 2 new units that we're utilizing currently as well. The high bid in this case, Cordery Brothers was $1,850. Silver Group was $1,600, and Harvard Logistics was $1,500. I would recommend the sale of the 1974 Penco trailer to Cordery Brothers in the amount of $1,850.
Okay, do we have a motion and a second to that effect? Motion by Alderman Franks, second. Second by Alderwoman Mulhall. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Item J, Logan Avenue Rehabilitation Project, East Avenue Traffic Signals. Brent?
Thank you. Again, memo in your packet. The plans for the Logan Avenue Rehab Project have been sent to IDOT for their review and approval. The plans call for the relocation of the existing traffic signals at the intersection of Logan and East Avenue. And in their review, IDOT noted that the traffic signals at the intersection are substandard and should be replaced. The estimated cost for the replacement of the traffic signals are $200,000, and I would recommend that the replacement of those traffic signals at the intersection of Logan Avenue and East Avenue be added to the Logan Avenue Rehabilitation Project at an estimated cost of $200,000. This work will be paid for from MFT and capital funds.
Thank you. Can we have a motion to that effect? Motion by Alderman Snow. Do we have a second? Second by Alderwoman Prather. Any discussion? Alderman Snow?
So Brent, up at the top of the thing, it says, the plans call for the relocation of existing signals, and then they're calling them deficient and substandard, so they're gonna have to be replaced anyhow. I'm a little confused on that terminology.
Well, originally, we were just gonna relocate the signals that are there, and two of the 4 signal poles have to be relocated for ADA clearance purposes. So IDOT came back and said, based on their inspection, they said, well, these things are too old, and they're substandard, and if you relocate the 2 that you're gonna relocate, you need to put them in as a standard, so you're gonna have to, so the standard would be a larger diameter base, different pole and stuff. So upgrade of that so that they're on those 2, and then it didn't make sense to just do 2 and leave to, and then have to update probably in a short time period to update those, as opposed to just do the whole intersection at one time. So therefore, the recommendation is to do all four for the 200,000 estimated cost.
Anybody else? If not, all those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Item K, the Sixth Street Low Flow Channel update. Brent?
Update on our low flow channel project. It's been a project that we've been working on for quite a while. CES has submitted the permit application to the Army Corps of Engineers for the Sixth Street Channel Drainage Improvement Project. Corps of Engineers has determined that the channel is an intermittent stream, and construction of a low flow channel will constitute a morphological change and will require mitigation. Wetland impacts will also require mitigation. The estimated cost of the mitigations is $610,000. And you can see on the attached to the memo is a overall map of the portion of the existing channel that we want to improve, as well as the armor flex bottom, or the paved low flow bottom, if you will, and the estimated cost for that construction, including the mitigation portion. And then there's also an attachment that shows the natural bottom with the detail there and the associated costs with performing the natural bottom. An alternative to the paved low flow channel bottom would be to create a wet bottom along the channel through a series of rock check dams. This design would provide for capture of sediments along the route with a defined channel to handle storm events. Construction of this alternative would not require any mitigation. And then we would need to review the natural bottom option with the property owner. So I guess at this time, I would be looking for direction from City Council in the form of a motion to review the natural bottom option for the Sixth Street Low Flow Channel project.
Do we have a motion to that effect? Motion by Alderman Porter, second by Alderwoman Prather. Discussion? Alderman Porter.
Yeah, you said you're gonna check into it, Brent, but I guess I would ask, is this natural bottom any better than what it is now? And having these rock dams in here, is that gonna actually impede the flow? Because, I mean, that's the problem we're having right now, is the flow is not enough and it backs up and causes the flooding, some of the flooding problems. So I'm just wondering if this is gonna be any better than just the way it is actually right now.
Okay, understanding the way it is right now is, if you could walk down there, especially now since it's been so dry, there's parts of there that you wouldn't even know that there was a stream there or a drainage ditch there now because it's been dry enough. But there's areas that have built up with sedimentation that are choked with cattails and so forth, which causes the water to dam up when it does rain, creating the problem, backing up the water, not letting it go as far as it can. When I say in here rock check dams, all that's doing is basically, if we choose the natural method, you're gonna have you'll have a defined waterway, and that rock check dam will be set periodically through the length of the project, basically to guarantee that you've got standing water along that entire length. Similarly to what they did with the mill race at Belvedere Park. If anybody's been here long enough to know what the mill race looked like before they did those improvements, and they created those little pools, if you will, to keep water in there all the time. Same concept. Now, it's not gonna be near as big or as elaborate as what goes through Belvedere Park, but it would basically maintain, if you look at the cross-section, it would maintain about a 6-foot bottom, a 6-foot wet bottom, if you will, at all times, so that when you did get their heavy rain events, then there's not any obstruction there because you've just got water. So you've got more water going on top of already the existing water. You don't have the cattails, you don't have the other growth and stuff that we have right now. Now, not to say that the paved low flow channel is a possibility. We can still do that, but in order for us to be allowed to do that, that's when that mitigation cost comes in, and that's when that $610,000 price tag. So in my opinion, I think, again, I have to get the buy-in from the property owner, but I think long-term, There will probably be some additional maintenance perhaps with the natural, as opposed to having the concrete low flow channel. And I say additional because it would just take longer to do the same effects. Once you have a paved low flow channel, I can go out there with a bobcat and basically go from point A to point B and clean up and load out and take care of the bottom. Whereby with the natural, it's more pick and load, so physically it'll just take longer. But I think in the long term, between the cost difference of the installation itself with the mitigation costs versus the costs of going through the wetlands, I think it's worth it to the city to at least look at that option and see if especially if the property owner is willing to participate as well. And it just, I guess, shows you how things have changed in the last 30 years, because keep in mind, north of 6th Street, that was paved initially, and it was piped, and there was no mitigation, nothing involved. And now to basically do that same thing on the south side of 6th Street, we got to go through the mitigation efforts.
Alderman Snow?
So the way it looks, according to the diagram, you've got the 6-foot wide section that's going to have vegetation in the middle and hold water most of the time based on what you're talking about. So how do you keep the cattails from impeding, or is that what you're talking about, having to go in and cherry pick out sections at a time to keep it?
Right, it would be, as part of the restoration work when this channel's established, that would be, the materials would be planted in that area. And that would, by having those materials planted in that area, they would basically take hold and help keep out any of those things. And then if cattails were to get into those areas, yes, then we'd have to go out and take those out.
Anybody else? This is obviously a vital, it's vital to relieving the flooding, especially over in the southern, southwest part of the city. Well, not only southwest part of the city, but actually to the east as well. So, anybody else? Alderwoman Freeman.
Thank you. So is the ArmorFlex bottom even really an option, Brent, since they won't allow a paved concrete channel?
Well, actually, they will allow it, and that's where you get into the mitigation costs. So that, basically the estimate at the bottom right now, the $1.2 million, that will allow you to do that paved low flow channel. But the cost where they get you is on those mitigation costs. So, yeah, that's over half of that cost, or about 50% of that cost is just mitigation. And basically what we have to do for mitigation is we have to buy into, because we are, I guess, for lack of better, depleting wetland resources, stream resources in the state, we have to go out and purchase credits out of a stream bank someplace else in the state to theoretically replace what we're taking away. And that's the calculated cost based on the length and the work that we're doing. That's the calculated cost of that mitigation effort.
Alderman Fleury.
Thanks, sir. So, and then just looking at, so I understand the mitigation is $600,000, but if we do the AmeriFlex bottom, the total cost is $1.2 million, whereas if we just do the natural, it's only total $246,000. Not only saving on the mitigation cost, it's saving on some additional material costs because we're not putting in concrete and stuff. So overall, it's going to be more inexpensive to go this route, and the water flow should be equal, just saying that over the long term, it's going to require more maintenance of having picked up out of it as opposed to just taking a bobcat all the way through. But overall, to make up that $9 difference, it would take quite a bit of time to get to that point.
Yes, I don't think you're going to see that big of a drop off in performance. Obviously, having a paved low flow channel is going to get your optimum release rate, flow rate. But I think for that dollar amount difference, I think the wetland, the natural bottom would work.
Thank you.
Alderman Porter.
I don't have the cost, the budget with me from what we did before, but do you remember offhand what the budgeted cost was for this section of the repair?
I'll give you a range because I don't remember specifically. I want to say it was between $350,000 and $500,000.
And Brent, I guess, you know, the concern I would have is that this is going to, you feel this is going to be a fix that won't require us, I know right now we are required to go over there and clean that out in order to make that water move, in order to move it to the river. So you believe that this will be, this is worth it I mean, $1 million is a lot of money, so you believe this will work though, obviously.
I believe it will. There'll still be work either way. No matter if you do the paved low flow channel, there'll still be sediment basins. At least there'll be at least one established at 6th Street where it comes out of the pipe system, and there'll probably at least one additional one designed in the project throughout the project route that will require a regular maintenance schedule to remove that sediment that's trapped, especially as long as the property remains in crop production. You're going to see more sediment runoff. Now, as if and when it's subdivided and developed, then it'll be a different story then. But I guess, and that's another thing to keep in mind too, as far as for future development, it's designed to be wet all the time if you go the natural route.
So that would actually work in our favor.
It could, but it'll be established by that time, since there's nothing as far as development goes in the horizon on there. If we go the natural route, it'll be all developed and everybody will know what it is before development takes place.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Snow.
So time-wise, what are we looking at getting this done? And I'm assuming this is done by contract as opposed to your guys putting it in.
Correct, it would be done by contract. If we go this route, then it'll be a matter of completing up the final engineering and going out to bid and getting the work done. I would expect that it would be done yet this year. Be done by, hopefully by, before snow flies.
Anybody else? Alderman Porter?
You're talking about the natural bottom option?
Yes, if that's what the direction the council wants to go, I'm basically either option I would hope to have completed by before snow flies this year yet. But no, I guess we'll see how that plays out, but that would be my goal.
So Brent, actually, you're looking then for a motion for the natural bottom option to review that with the property owner and then come back?
Correct. So once I find out from the property owner if he's willing to entertain that possibility, then I would come back to committee, hopefully in the next committee meeting, and update committee and to proceed that accordingly. And I'd have a proposal then, firm proposal from CES to complete that work.
Okay. Alderman Porter?
I'll make that motion.
We've
It's already
already,
been made.
we already got a motion, so any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. NIMAC streetlight bids. Brett?
Thank you. Memo in your packet. The NIMAC group bid for street lighting will be held on Tuesday, June 8th. NIMAC stands for Northern Illinois Municipal Electrical Cooperative. The city has two accounts that are included in this bid for our R23 streetlights and R25 streetlights. I guess in layman's terms, and I don't know which is which, but one of them is for metered service and the other one is unmetered service. So I'm not sure which is R25 and which is R23, but that's for metered service accounts and unmetered service, which unmetered are dawn to dusk, basically. So the bids will be received from AEP, Constellation, Dynegy, and MC Squared Energy. Pricing will be provided for 1, 2, and 3-year terms. In order to accept the bid, we need to execute the winning suppliers agreement on the day of the bid. Therefore, I would recommend authorizing the mayor to sign the suppliers agreement for electricity for the above referenced accounts on the day of the bid opening. The electricity will be paid for from line item 015-330-6310. There has been a resolution produced by the city attorney that would be on council, in the council packet for approval if you approve of this recommendation.
Okay, do we have a motion to that effect?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Alderman Stevens. Do we have a second? Second by Alderman Snow. Further discussion? Alderman Snow?
So out of curiosity, I'm assuming Tuesday the 8th is not a scheduling conflict for you? or do we have alternatives for having somebody sign it in lieu of you, if something does happen, such as the city attorney or the city clerk? Just tossing that out there.
The contract may not actually be signed that day, but it has to be approved that day, so if he's on the phone, we can do it that way. But yes, that's taken care of. NIMEC actually is a municipal cooperative, and they go out to bid for a bunch of different municipalities, and that's why they can get the cheaper rates. So we all go out to bid, we each choose our own provider, but they go out and get the bids together for us. We'll be doing this again in about a month for not the city's use of electricity, but for the residents, because we also use them for our electric aggregation for the residents, so.
Anybody else? All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Thank you. Item M, Fifth Avenue Storm Sewer Project Update.
Thank you, Your Honor. Memo in your packet. So CES has completed the majority of the preliminary engineering for the Fifth Avenue project. They are in the process of updating the preliminary cost estimate for the project. The budget estimate that was prepared back in 2018 was $4,600,000. The Fifth Avenue project will include the following improvements: installation of up to a 72-inch equivalent storm sewer relief line along Fifth Avenue from 7th Street to the Kishwaukee River, construction of a stormwater detention facility and property owned by Franklin Display Group adjacent to the Union Pacific Railroad right-of-way, the reconstruction of Fifth Avenue from 7th Street to West Locust Street, and the reconstruction of Allen Street from Fifth Avenue to 7th Avenue. So far, we have received a determination from the Army Corps of Engineers that a new storm sewer outlet to the Kishwaukee River will be covered under a nationwide permit. This is good news because nationwide permits is simply, we go to the Army Corps website, we pull off the appropriate nationwide permit. There's about 13 of them. The applicable permit we fill out, we send it to the Corps of Engineers, they review and approve it. So good news, we don't have to go through any mitigation or anything else that we're looking at doing on our 6th Street low flow channel, for example. We have also received preliminary approval for a permit from the Union Pacific Railroad for a pipeline crossing of the right-of-way. The railroad has advised us that we will not be required to provide a tunneling design for this project based on the preliminary design submitted. As you recall, there was additional funds that we possibly could have cost us to do that tunneling design. And instead of doing one single 72-inch pipe underneath the railroad tracks, we are actually proposing to do twin pipes underneath the railroad tracks, thereby not having to go through the tunneling exercise. So that appears it's going to work that way, and that's how the final design of the project will be approached. The route of the new storm sewer from the railroad right-of-way to the river will be across property owned by Kevin Bungie, who owns CES, and Kevin's father, Terrence Bungie, who has recently passed away. Kevin Bungie has agreed to provide an easement across the CES property, 700 West Locust Street, and to sell his father's property at 717 West Locust Street to the city for the full appraised value of his father's property. An appraisal was done in 2019 showing a value of $50,000. An updated appraisal will be needed to determine the current value. A map of the proposed route from the railroad right-of-way to the river is attached for your reference. If you go to the third page, with the plan and profile sheet attached, you will see the proposed route through between the railroad tracks and West Locust Street. That is the CES property, and they have agreed to provide us with a storm sewer utility easement through there to allow for the construction of the pipe. And then we will cross under West Locust Street, and then we get across between West Locust Street to the river. That would be Terrence Bungie's property there that we're proposing that we purchase. The reason why we're proposing purchase of that parcel, it's a very small parcel. It's about 70 by 50, roughly numbers, property dimensions. And by the time you run the storm sewer system through there, it doesn't leave a lot of room for anything else. So that's why we're recommending that we just purchase that entire property as opposed to an easement. Again, the owners of Franklin Display Group, we've had negotiations with them, and they have agreed in principle to provide a storm sewer easement across the northerly edge of their property, as well as sell a portion of their property on the west side of their building to allow for construction of the stormwater detention facility. The sale of the property and granting of the easement would be for the full appraised value of each. And again, if you go to the last page of the attachment, one with the red lines on it, that's kind of a highlight of the Franklin Display Group property. The easement area that we're specifically talking about would be along the northerly property line, up adjacent to the railroad tracks to allow for pipe installation. And then the purchase for the detention area is as shown on the west side of the property. I would recommend obtaining an updated appraisal for the property located at 717 West Locust Street and an appraisal for the Franklin Display Group property located at 801 Fifth Avenue for the purpose of obtaining property and acquiring easements for the construction of the Fifth Avenue Storm Sewer Relief Line. The recommended motion would be a motion to authorize the Public Works Director to obtain an updated appraisal for 717 West Locust Street and to obtain an appraisal for the needed property and easements located at 801 Fifth Avenue.
Okay, do we have a motion to that effect?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second
By
that.
Alderman Mulhall and second by Alderman Stevens. Any discussion? Alderwoman Franks.
Brent, you said the property at 717 West Locust Street is pretty small. Is there anything that we can use that property for?
We're gonna use it to allow to put the storm sewer installation on there. Once we do that, there doesn't leave much of the property left to use for anything else. We could consider, I guess, if some, I guess, depending what happens down the line, if the park district would somehow be interested in it in the future through different acquisitions and stuff, we could look at, perhaps doing something there. But as far as any other improvements, it would just be the storm sewer.
Alderman Burden, did you have a comment? Did you have your hand up? No? Okay. Alderman Porter?
So this is just a vacant lot, then there's a house on this?
There is currently a house there, a small house there, and there's a slab, a garage slab there with no garage. So we would have to, we would demolish the house in-house. We do that work ourselves after the fire department got done with it, and then remove it. Sorry, I didn't mean to leave the police department on. I'm sorry.
Alderman Snow?
So what is the rationale in actually just not going straight through from one spot to the other to the river and just use the side yard for the easement and then tearing down the house? And what's the logistics there, or is that just the best place for this to actually exit?
I'm not sure.
Well, so as the diagram goes from one box to another, instead of just going straight to the river, it makes the detour through the middle of the house with the rationale.
That's for the clearances and so forth. You're talking about the offset between the parking lot and the house? I'm not sure what you mean by the offset.
Well, it goes straight.
Right.
And then it veers.
Yes.
Why can't it just go straight?
Because we don't, it's not property, that's not on the same property, it'd be on different property and went straight across. There's not enough room to do straight.
Okay.
And it really doesn't make a difference coming downstream, having that angle on there, it doesn't make any difference. But the way it's aligned on there is how it's gonna fit across the CES property and then also fit on this property at 717.
Then the other question is, so we're gonna go through the parking lot, so they assume their parking lot's gonna get torn up at some point for a period of time that they won't be able to use it.
That's correct.
And keep in mind, this is just, this is for the end of this project, to be able to have appraisals, to be able to get to the river, regardless of the route where Brent has it diagrammed out in red, regardless if we use a detention pond or we go straight and then cut over to the west at Franklin Wire. This is just to be able to get through CES's property and then also the home of CES, the father of Bungie, Kevin Bungie, his property, to be able to get to the river. So.
And this all came about, I guess, a little history, especially for the new alderman. This all came about in the Baxter and Woodman study was identified that was needed to be done, but what they identified was additional stormwater detention, and they showed that on the Washington School property. And because the Washington School has recently made improvements for a thermal heating system in and around the administration building and the school building, then that made that property not available to us for stormwater detention. So this is an alternate design that was put forth, and we've actually gone through the model that was created by Baxter and Woodman as part of their study. We actually modeled up this scenario through there, and it shows that it'll work probably even better than what was anticipated with the detention at Washington School.
Alderwoman Freeman?
Thank you. And so Brent, we talked today, and this is still all preliminary engineering, and there'll be more engineering to be done before this is actually shovel-ready.
Correct. So process-wise, if the motion is approved tonight, then we'll get that updated appraisal information. Once I get that information back, then I'll be back to committee to advise, here's the appraisal amounts, here's the recommended purchase price, and what those costs are to obtain the necessary right-of-ways and easements, and then council will have to decide if they want to approve and go forward with that. And if they do, then I would have the proposal from Kevin Bungie to complete the final engineering, if we'll produce the bid documents. Because as of right now, everything's has been looked to make sure that we avoid the conflicts. And then you'll get into the actual final design work, where now we know that we'll probably have to relocate sanitary sewer services, water services, because a 72-inch pipe going through the ground of all existing utilities that are already in the ground, there's going to be many conflicts, and we got to overcome all those conflicts. So all of that has to be designed and engineered. So time-wise, again, we've been working on this project since 2018 initially, and it's just taken that long to get to this point, and it'll probably be the balance of this year into the winter season to have that engineering work done, so that hopefully we would be ready to go to bid next spring on this project, if council decides to go forward with it.
Alderman Stevens?
I don't know if it's might be in the consideration, but back either in that detention pond or back in the L shape of that building, there's an abandoned well. I don't know, we'd have to look at that under engineering or what, but there is one back in there.
Okay, and I know they did an ultra survey of the property at some point. I'll have to see if that was picked up as part of the ultra survey also.
Might not have been, because me and my dad are the ones that abandoned it, so I know it's there.
Okay.
Thank you, Alderman Stevens. Anybody else? Okay, then on the motion to authorize the Public Works Director to obtain an updated appraisal for 717 West Locust Street and to obtain an appraisal for the needed property and easements located at 801 Fifth Avenue. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, motion passed. If you don't mind, the council, I'm going to deviate from this agenda. I see Amy sitting out here with her mask on. Sorry, Amy. Yes, you are. And yes, so if there's no objection, could we go to under other 5, the discussion in our packet of asking Boone County to split expenses concerning the COSAP police officer? I assume that's what you're here for? Yes.
And supporter. I know Ms. Smith, our state's attorney, and Amanda from the health department had intentions of getting on the phone tonight, but I understand there's not phone service tonight, so they cannot be here in person for anyone.
Well, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll move to this item on the agenda, and then if there's any questions or that they may have for you, we'll just have you come right up here and answer them. If you can. Okay, thank you. So, I believe Alderman Porter had submitted a letter. And so, Alderman Porter, I'll ask you to comment on this and give us your thoughts behind this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, when we talked about this previously, Alderman Brereton made a motion to have the city county split the cost of any overages that might happen with this, the COSAP officer, and I thought that was a good idea. The only reason I voted no was because it was contingent on actually hiring the officer, and it looked like there was going to be maybe a conflict there that might actually screw up the whole grant because there was a timeline on it. So, but I did think it was a good idea, so I wanted to bring it back up again and just put it up for a motion to, split the cost, because I think it's important that, well, for one thing, somebody, and I can't remember who it was, but somebody had mentioned that some of these contacts might be made outside of the city limits, in the county, so that would be one reason for splitting the costs. And also, this was kind of the county health department's whole idea in the beginning. They kind of started the ball rolling on it, so I just feel that it's we should have a city-county split on this, and I know we can't force them to do anything, but I would like to see a resolution made up to ask them to consider it, the county board to consider a split on any overages that, which it looks like the only real overage would probably be overtime if there's any overtime. But anyway, I just would like to go ahead and I'll make a motion that we ask the county board to consider a split in any overages.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor to ask the county board to split any overtime expenses.
Well, any expenses that would be over what the grant pays for.
Okay. Any incidental expenses with the county? Is that correct? So we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Alderman Brereton. Any discussion? Alderwoman Freeman?
So, as I tried to point out, before this all got passed, in our budget, it's $57,625 for the salary for the COSAP officer. Our budget, as presented by Becky Tobin, said that our school resource officer is reimbursed to us at 70% of the average cost of an officer. And at 70% of an average cost of an officer, they reimburse us $97,812 a year. Right now, at $94,000, that COSAP doesn't even cover the average salary and benefits, let alone anything else. And that is a beginning year. So the average cost of his officer is actually $140,000 after its probationary period. So that's $46,000. We're already down. So this is going to cost the taxpayers a lot more than just overtime. That and I'm going to be tracking a lot of the stats on this. I'm thinking that if this is actually working, our incarceration of drug offenders should probably be dropping in the county. That rate should probably be dropping if this program is working. And I'm also concerned that a lot of people that are in our county jail aren't even from Boone County, so they would be getting the services. I'm okay if out-of-county people are charged for the Rosecrans services while they're inmates, but I want to make sure that our actual Boone County inmates are not being charged for services from Rosecrans that we are getting free via a grant.
Amy, can you come up? Can you come up and just state your name for the record, please? Thank you.
My name's Amy Gallino, Deputy Director of Boone County Probation. Inmates will not be charged for services that they're going to receive from Rosecrans, whether they're our residents or not our residents. So
And then the outreach when they're out of jail, that is for Boone County residents, not for then residents that are going back to their hometown.
Would you agree then that our incarceration rate as far as drug offenses should be dropping if this program is successful?
Yes, that's my wish, for sure, yes. Our goal, and you know, our goal is also to reduce overdoses, reduce calls for service. That's another big goal for this grant, is to reduce calls so officers don't need to go to calls that are probably not criminal in nature, but people call the police, because oftentimes they don't know who to call, so they call the police. The goal is that this COSAP officer will do the outreach to those homes, like a follow-up, so they don't keep getting called for, you know, the behavior health needs, the mental health issues.
Alderman Freeman, if I may, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, absolutely.
I think another goal for us is to reduce crime in general. You know, one of the advantages of having this COSAP officer would be to have that early intervention and supply them with the resources and advocates that they would need to then interrupt that substance abuse cycle, so that way they're not potentially committing crimes to support their habit. So some of those people don't necessarily get arrested and ultimately get lodged in jail, but we're looking at the overall big picture of hopefully keeping them from victimizing members within our community to support their drug habit.
And to include working with their family members of addicts. That's where I can tell you our department gets a lot of calls. If they're not calling the police department or the sheriff's department, they're calling the probation department. What do we do? Where do we go? And you know, we do the best we can with the time that we have, but a lot of these individuals, a lot of these calls aren't people that are on our caseload or not court ordered to talk to us, but we will assist if we can. It will be a great project, a grant. This grant is really good for the community to go out there and do that outreach at their home.
Chief, did you have any further comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that there's no confusion in terms of what the grant covers in terms of salary for the police officer that's going to be hired for the grant specifically. The grant was written to cover the expenses for an entry-level officer, not a mid-level or average officer. Because you're right, an average officer, or the cost of the salary for an average officer, I'll take your math, I haven't done it myself, but would be considerably more than that of an entry-level officer, which is our intent of the grant to cover.
Okay, and keep in mind, we're almost a little bit out of our scope of discussion here, because the council's already voted on that, but this is a motion specifically to ask the county if they would share in some of the costs and any of the incidental costs going forward with this. So, is that correct, Alderman Porter?
Yes, that's correct.
And you want the city to go ahead and ask them, so I would suggest then we have Attorney Drella draft a letter to the county. We, as a council's all aware, we don't have a city-county coordinating committee anymore. That was dissolved. So that would probably be the best, way to approach that, is to have, in your motion, to have the city city attorney draft a letter to the county, stating your motion to the county board chairman. Agree?
That sounds correct.
Okay. Any other discussion? Attorney Drella?
Just briefly, keep in mind, at least up until, as far as I know, this point, the primary discussion has been the overtime issue. I think the health department's made pretty clear, and the chief as well, that all the other incidental expenses, a car, phones, office supplies, all that kind of things is taken care of by the grant. So your primary uncovered expense is going to be that overtime. And the absolute easiest way to handle that issue is the mayor simply direct the police chief not to incur any overtime with respect to this position unless it's covered for by the grant. Whether or not the county agrees with us or not at that point, we hold the keys on that issue at that point. So if the council wants me to, I'll draft that letter. I have no problem doing that. I'll forward that to the state's attorney, the county board chairperson, after it passes council next week. But the easiest way to solve that overtime issue is simply tell the chief not to authorize it.
Chief, don't authorize.
Yes, sir.
So, if that, if that clears that up for you, I mean, do you still want to go forward with the motion? We have a motion and a second on the floor, so if you want that to cover in hopes of perhaps, having the county decide to take part in not only overtime, but any incidentals, then we already have a motion and a second. We can vote on it. It's up to the person with the motion and the second, how they want to proceed.
Yeah, I would like to do that. I want
Okay.
to make sure that this is, a bilateral thing between the city county and,
I understand.
I don't see any reason why they would say no. I mean, if they do say no, it's going to be pretty telling. It's up to their vote, but I don't see any reason why they wouldn't agree, but I do want to make sure that we do cover all the costs.
Okay. With that in mind, we'll continue. Alderman Fleury.
So just to be clear, as I see in your motion here, so it's independent of, so it's not going to affect the grant that's already been approved or the officer that's already been approved. You're just saying going forward, if there's additional expenses not covered by the grant, asking the county to split that with us.
That's correct. That's why.
Thank you.
Alderman Snow.
So having been to a number of county board meetings and previously the city-county coordinating, don't be surprised that they don't approve this because they are on an extremely tight budget, and unless they become extremely flush with money because of grant money because of the COVID and reimbursements and stuff, I doubt that they're going to be jumping at the bit to say, yeah, we'll cover it, or the sheriff's going to say, yeah, we can take it out of our budget. But just tossing that out there, don't be surprised that they don't, because they don't have the fundage. They're probably not sitting as well financially, as it were, than we are.
In addition to that, I wouldn't be surprised either, because the chief is the one that has the keys to the car of the overtime. The chief is the one that would authorize it. The county would not have that authority to authorize it, so essentially, they could be incurring costs that they haven't authorized, because the chief might approve 8 or 10 hours or whatever over the course of a couple of months for the position if it's being split. So I would not be surprised if they said no. I'm happy to bring the message to them, but I wouldn't read too much into a no vote if they decided not to, because quite frankly, we're the ones that control the overtime on it.
Alderman Porter, then Alderwoman Franks.
Okay, well, I just wanted to put it forth to them because they are elected officials, and the vote will be very telling, I would think.
Thank you. Alderwoman Franks.
I guess what bothers me the most is that they don't want any skin in the game. Why will not, why will they not help?
If I may give some information.
Certainly, yes.
I'm not speaking for the county board in any way. I'm just going to share with you the other half of the grant. They have skin in the game on the other half of the grant. It's 2 partnerships to have Rosecrans in the jail. A lot of accommodations have been made to make that happen. They are providing space for that counselor to be there and the manpower to have them there to move prisoners. It takes a lot of finagling to make that happen, and they have jumped on board to be a partnership with Rosecrans to make that happen. They've also, just so everybody's aware, they've certainly added medical benefits to prisoners on a daily basis now in the jail, 5 days a week. There is a nurse on staff, and that's a huge change for our jail. They have brought in behavioral health through Crusader Clinic, where they can see a counselor Inmates are welcome to see a counselor, which is also a huge benefit to inmates, to try to do rehabilitation while they're a captive audience, and hopefully then link them to other services when they're out of jail, hence the COSAP officer. So,
One more question. I did listen to you last Thursday at your board meeting, and at the very end, I didn't catch it, but didn't you say something like you would be helping other people besides Boone County?
Boone County residents only. Both grants, it's very specific in the grant. It's for Boone County residents.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I-
well, unless
I
they're in
caught
the jail.
last-
If they're in the jail and they're from other areas, they're going to get the help while they're in the jail, like the counseling. Those inmates would have opportunity at counseling. So,
Okay. Alderwoman Prather?
Yeah, I had reached out to Tricia earlier today because I was curious to know who all is actually involved in the Boone County Behavioral Health Task Force.
yes.
And I also asked her what was the original inception of the getting this all together. She had told me it was May of 2017.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, and from what I understand, let's see. So the Boone County Administration, the Boone County Board, the Boone County Drug Prevention Coalition, the Boone County Geographic Information System, the Boone County Health Department, the Boone County Jail, the Boone County Planning, the Boone County Probation, Boone County Public Defender, Boone County Sheriff, Boone County State's Attorney's Office, all of these county agencies have been meeting bi-monthly or at least monthly since 2017, in May of 2017.
Correct.
So this is something that these county organizations have been putting skin in the game, so to speak, since 2017. And so as I noticed that the City of Belvedere is listed as partnership here between City Hall, Belvedere Police, and Fire. But it's more or less been Boone County administration that's been kind of providing the leadership in this at this point. Is that correct?
Amanda Mail with the Health Department, our Health Department Administrator, she is the driving force, that is for sure. And there's a core group of us that sit on a smaller committee to make sure things are moving along. But honestly, all partners, there's 17 partners in total. Swedish American Hospital, OSF, Crusader Clinic, the fire department, you know, they've been there. The mayor had been there. The city clerk had been there. In the beginning, you know, we had everybody there every month, so at least 17 partners. And anybody's welcome to come listen, to hear. We encourage people to come listen, to hear. If you're not comfortable, certainly come listen, come join. We're hopeful that the new mayor will come and join. You know, it's really for the whole community to get our resources and share the resources.
Yes, continue.
I just wanted to make a note. I don't know if anybody's really said this, but I just really want to commend everything that the coalition has been doing up to this point, and for the example of the excellence of leadership that has been put forth in combating this issue.
Thank you.
And so we have a motion now. Moving forward, we have to keep in mind that the motion is about not who has contributed, but who's going to contribute going forward. And so that's a motion that we have regarding monetarily wise, correct? So we have a motion and a second then. Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Galliano.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience. Thank you. Mhm. Okay. We'll go back then, excuse me, we'll go back to the top portion of the agenda, item N, alley rehab list. Brent?
Thank you, Your Honor. In your packet, there was two maps presented. Basically, as I think mostly aldermen, even the new aldermen know, we started a few years ago updating, improving, rehabbing the alleyways, there are established alleyways that are paved that are part of our snow removal program for winter snow removal. And basically, we are removing the existing surfaces. A lot of them were seal coated probably, I would say 15 years ago or so approximately, and have been patched and everything since then, but no major work has been done on them, and they are in need of repair and updating. So we started that a few years ago, and those alleys that have been completed to date are highlighted in the yellow color, and the map is both north and south side. So I wanted to get in front of the aldermen, basically the list going forward of the anticipation for work on those alleys to complete the balance of the alleys that we have to complete that need to be updated, and those are taken through 2025. And basically, we have been averaging over those last couple of years, spending about $15,000 to $20,000 out of our street department line item, street parking lot maintenance materials for materials to do the overlay work. This is work that is done completely in-house by the street department as time and funds have allow us to do. And so, again, this is a list of those alleys and our proposed time frame to complete that work in those alleys. I will be following up, so there's really no action needed to be taken on this list. This is more for information for the council. We've had alley discussions in the past. We have several alleys in town that are unimproved, that are grass surfaced, that has no activity on them. The garages no longer are off the alleyway. A lot of those alleyways, I think, can probably be vacated, put back on the tax rolls, vacated to the adjacent property owners. So hopefully at our next committee meeting, I'll have that work put together with a list of those alleys that we can vacate, as well as a list of alleys that are currently grass or currently unimproved, otherwise unimproved, that probably could be improved or should be improved at this point in time. So I'll have that information to present as well at the next committee. But again, I know there's been lots of questions. I've been receiving a lot of questions from residents and stuff who live on the alleys and say, hey, when's mine gonna get done? That's really nice over here and the next block over, and I would sure like to have that here. So this is an answer to that. This would take care of through 2025 with our current funding levels and our current time commitments of our street department personnel to allow us to do those rehabs through 2025.
Okay, I know from my perspective, Brad, I'm glad to see this. I think some of these alley questions go back, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 years. So I'm glad to see it, because I've always felt that if we have an easement for an alley and we have an alley that is only partially completed and we can complete it at a minimal cost, I think that's we have the easement, it's there for a reason. I think we should complete them, so I'm glad to see that. Thank you.
Yes, and like I said, hopefully at our next committee, I'll have that list, the final list of ones that we can vacate and the ones that we can consider improving.
Very good. Thank you. Shall we move on? Item O, renewal of the 10-year traffic control maintenance agreement with IDOT.
Again, there's correspondence in your packets regarding our letter from the Operations Department for IDOT. It's our time to renew our annual 10-year agreement, our 10-year agreement for traffic signal maintenance. We do this on behalf of IDOT, whereby we will have either our own services, our own street department, or we'll have a contract. Usually it's William Charles Electric that handles the contractor end of things. And the agreement that we have with IDOT is they reimburse us for those expenses, and we turn those in on an annual basis, usually in June or July. So when you see the traffic signal maintenance line item in the street department, if you notice that number is overexpended, that's because everything and we even do some work on behalf of the county also that they reimburse us on. So that is work that we do on behalf of IDOT as well as our own work, and then we are reimbursed for those services. So I would recommend approval of the local agency maintenance of traffic control devices, our intergovernmental agreement with IDOT.
Okay, do we have a motion to that effect? Alderman Porter, second by Alderman Fleury. Any discussion? Alderman Snow?
So Brent, this just pertains to any of the Illinois highway systems like Grant Highway or the E-Buy. in Appleton/State Street, those kind of intersections, is that correct?
Yes, it would apply to any signalized intersection that IDOT has jurisdiction on. So some of the intersections are 100% IDOT, some of the intersections are 50/50, some are 75/25. It all varies, but we have a list of all the intersections that are covered through the agreement, and they're applied percentages so that when we figure up our bills and our billing that we do to the state, it's all based on those percentages.
Anything further? If not, all those in favor of the IDOT 10-year maintenance agreement signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. We have 3 building, planning, and zoning unfinished business, none. 4 building, planning, zoning, new business. We have an update. Gina?
Okay, I'll keep it quick. There is a plant commission tomorrow night for video gaming at Casey's. And then next month, I have 2 cases for the gas station at 817 North State Street to bring it into compliance. And their ultimate goal is to have video gaming as well. Things are picking up in the department. Last year, I had 10 cases altogether. The gas station cases equal number 10 for this year, so already twice as busy, which is good. A couple of zoning verification letters. Still working on grant. I have a couple grant applications for the downtown facade grant. Still working on the historic preservation grant applications. Busy. Our very first strolls of the season is this Sunday, so I've been blowing up Facebook the last couple days with stroll posting, confirming everything with vendors, getting the health plan submitted to the health department, stuff like that. Working on Heritage Days as well. Poplar Grove has a couple rumblings of cases, not too much. I do expect quite a few cases for the city to get submitted in the next couple of months as well. So that's it for the planning department. It's really just been strolls and Heritage Days, making up for the lack of cases as far as time consumption goes.
Okay, thank you. So we go to item B, special use extension 1930 to 1960 Chrysler personal storage facility. Gina?
Yep, so this special use was originally granted in 2018. It's for self-storage units on right where Chrysler Drive kind of curves and almost turns into a frontage road along the highway. It's a good spot for them. It's really kind of tucked away, hidden, out of sight, out of mind. Also, because of that curve in the road, you do not want to encourage a traditional industrial development of semi-trucks. So having this that has minimum vehicle traffic is good because of the road condition down there. Just like everything else, slow to start, COVID hit, basically stalled it completely. In the last couple of months, I have been working with the applicant. They're looking at revising the site plan slightly to reposition the buildings, working on some engineering for it. He thinks he's going to be able to get a building permit pulled before the case actually expires, but to be on the safe side, he is asking for an extension to give him that extra year, just be on the safe side.
Okay. So do we have a motion then to request or to grant a 1-year extension for the special use permit for a personal storage facility at 1930-1960 Chrysler Drive? Motion by Alderman Snow, second by Alderman Fleury. Discussion. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. And building department update as far as anything else. I'm sorry, Kip.
It's all right. Thank you, Mayor.
Yep.
For the month of April, we had 105 permits issued, 93 residential, 12 commercial, for a construction value of just over $5.5 million, with a revenue of just under 14,000. Currently, property maintenance closed 11 cases for April, and we have 17 open. And I'll entertain any questions.
Hearing none, we'll go to item D, Habitat for Humanity, waiving the building and zoning fees for 407 West Madison Street. Kip?
Thank you, Mayor. Attached is a request from Habitat for Humanity for the council's consideration to have the building and zoning permit fees waived for the construction of a new home at 407 West Madison Street. City Council has in the past approved this request. The estimated fees for the permit to be waived will be $880. If the council is willing to proceed with this project, I would recommend that the building and zoning fees be waived for this project, as has been done in the past.
Okay, let's make these separate. So we have a motion then, Alderman Snow, to waive the permit fees at $880 for the Habitat for Humanity, correct? Yeah. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Alderwoman Mulhall. Any discussion regarding that? If not, all those in favor say aye. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold, take that back. Let's hold up. Alderwoman Freeman, I didn't see you there.
That's okay. I just wanted to, even though they don't have to pay the permit fees and stuff, they still do get the inspections, right?
Correct, yeah. And we currently have the plans in-house. We're reviewing them, and we go through the same as if it was a house in preserve or landmark or any existing lot in town.
Okay. All right. So any other questions, discussion? All those in favor then of waiving the permit fee at $880, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Thank you. And then also then the building zoning fees be waived for this project. Is that what you're looking for then on this? Okay. Do we have a motion to that effect? Motion by Alderman McGee. Do we have a second? Second by Alderwoman Mulhall. Any discussion on this? I think it's going to a great cause. Great effort.
Your Honor.
Alderman Snow?
Just clarity, so what is the difference, or what's entailed in the building and zoning fee versus the building permit fee?
It's pretty much the same. The review fees for the residents and the zoning fees to make sure the house is placed within the required setbacks.
Any other questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. All right, moving on to 5. We already covered A. So Attorney Drella.
This is item 5B, the financial services agreement for temporary assistance. As you know, with the resignation of Ms. Tobin as the finance director, that office is still currently vacant. We have begun interviewing potential candidates finally this week, but it might be some time before somebody's actually on board and in that position. Ms. Tobin is willing to, I euphemistically call it, keep the lights on, so to speak, with respect to that position. There's work, the clerk's office has picked up an extraordinary amount of additional work trying to get things done. And of course, the council has authorized the agreement with Sikich to help with the audit preparation. However, there's still a lot of work that is not getting done, such as grant reporting, investment management, managing our bank accounts, ensuring our debt payments are made on time, things like that. Ms. Tobin's willing to do that at the rate of $50 per hour. She figures she can only do a few hours per week doing that because she does have a current new job. If she has to come into the city, because of course she lives in Wisconsin now, she's asking for a $25 per diem day travel reimbursement. In speaking with Mayor Morris, it also came to our attention, frankly, from the applicants we're getting, it's probably going to be some time before they are up and running fully where they can handle things on their own without at least some guidance as to what's happened in the past. So the intention would actually be continue utilizing these services at least for a short time to get the new person up to speed on how the city operates. So what I'd be seeking is a motion to approve retaining Becky Tobin at the rate of $50 per hour with a $25 per diem travel charge, if needed, to assist the city with finance matters, including but not limited to the grant reporting, investment management, bank account management, debt payments, and if there's any needed assistance with the audit.
Do we have a motion to that effect? Motion by Alderman Fleury, second, Alderwoman Mulhall. Any discussion? Before we start, I would say, did you put a hours per week on that?
She's figuring that she could spend maybe 5 to 6 hours per week in the beginning of the email. Frankly, if we need her more, I don't know if she can afford, if she can swing it from her current schedule, but obviously we'd have to request that.
And I think it's important, to understand that, we have to crawl really with this position. I mean, we have a certain amount of applicants, but we also have to find the right one. We're kind of at a disadvantage with that. We'll get it solved. We will figure it out, and we'll hire somebody. But until then, if we do have a stopgap, that might be the best alternative that we have. So until we get somebody hired, and as soon as we do, they even may have questions about some of the procedures and protocol and processes that, that was done prior. So we'll try and limit it as much as we can, but might be the best we can do. So, any discussion? Alderwoman Freeman.
Thank you. So, I don't know if this is for Attorney Drella or Chief Woody, but when I spoke to you recently about the body camera grant progress, the Wallace was doing it, but that there was a portion that needed to be done by the finance director, and without Becky, you didn't know if you were going to be able to get through that hurdle. And I know that it was only until May 15th, so have you figured that out, or are we really squeezing it?
We are squeezing it, but yes, we have figured it out. Deputy Chief Wallace has been able to work with city clerk. She was able to get that information for us, and we are still putting together some items that the state is going to require, but we should be able to have that information submitted to them. We'll have to wait and see what their response is going to be, because they require that the check actually be not only cut but cashed. So that may be the next hurdle that we're looking to overcome at this point. But we are still in the process of applying for it and submitting.
Okay, so we didn't really need Becky. Sarah was able to handle that.
Yeah, for that particular question, yes.
Thank you for the reminder, Alderwoman Freeman. That slipped my mind, but it sounds like we're headed in the right direction. Yep. All right, so we have a motion and a second on the floor. Alderman Brereton.
Thank you, Mayor. Just in the past, when we have, I just know the last finance director that we lost kind of abruptly, she left, and we didn't have her help anymore. So I'm just wondering, is this a completely different scenario now where we can't survive, or?
It is a slightly different scenario. First, this is a much longer period of time. When Pat Chamberlain left, the administration at that point was able to reach out a little bit quicker and get somebody in-house that had experience in municipal experience and finance experience to come in and take over. Second, we hadn't just lost our deputy clerk, and we weren't in the process of training somebody new to handle all the payroll and things like that on that side of the aisle too, that needs to get done. So there was a little bit more time to spend on the finance stuff. And also going forward, again, the administration was able to hire Becky, who had some finance experience from the county. Quite frankly, the applicants we're getting have zero municipal experience whatsoever at this point.
We are also at the audit time right now,
Yeah.
so it's taken a lot of time working with the auditors.
Yeah, it's, it isn't a It isn't a great time, it isn't a great timing here, but we'll just have to keep trying. We'll find somebody. Otherwise, we'll go to Plan B. Anybody know what that is? All right, we'll figure it out. All right, so motion and a second on the floor. Any other discussion? If none, all those, Alderwoman Franks?
It's just a thought that ran through my mind. Because Becky works in the state of Wisconsin and we're going to use her for Illinois, is there any conflict of interest because she's quit and she's gone to another state?
No, it's just any consulting agreement no different than any other. There's no conflict of interest that way. She may have problems with her taxes, but that's her problem.
All righty. Any other comments, discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll move forward with that, and hopefully we'll be able to fill this position rather soon. That's our hope. Thank you. Item C is the PSEBA benefits for disabled police officer. City Attorney?
I'm going to start this with a caveat and a word of caution. We're discussing somebody's health conditions, and obviously we're on TV. For HIPAA purposes, I would encourage us not to get into specifics with respect to health conditions. But that being said, we have to discuss in open session because we need to take action. PSEBA, the PSEBA is the Public Safety Employee Benefits Act. Essentially what that act says, that if you have a firefighter or a police officer, in your county jailers, but a fire officer or a police officer who receives a line of duty disability pension from their pension board due to an injury or an illness in the case of a police officer that was incurred in either the illegal act of another or enforcing the laws of the municipality or the state of Illinois or rescuing somebody. So if you have a line of duty disability and the injury is caused by one of those factors, then that employee is entitled to essentially free health insurance for them and their dependents. The statute initially says for life, but it's been ruled since then that it really goes into you're eligible for Medicare. At that point, you have alternative insurance, so you come off the state's insurance at that point and go into Medicare. This employee has received a line of duty disability pension from the Belvedere Police Pension Fund, Brandon Parker. And he did submit a letter that indicates the nature of all of his injuries. And you'll notice that he has previously been awarded a line of duty disability pension, went out on that pension with the health benefits, and somehow worked himself back into shape and came back to the city because once you can pass a medical, you're required to come back to work, and he did. Since that time, some of those old injuries have become exacerbated, in part due to an arrest. Well, actually, the arrest is a new injury. In an arrest, he tore the tendons in his wrist, which have never completely healed and have progressively gotten worse. And also in that time, he injured the same arm rescuing somebody from a river, and when they got pulled out, it aggravated that injury. He went to a doctor, and that doctor said, you can't be a police officer anymore. You can't handle the stress on your body. At that point, we sent him to our own doctor to verify that. And that doctor said, no, he's not fit for duty. At that point, he applied for his duty pension, his line of duty disability pension, went to more doctors that the pension board requires, and every single one of them said, you're not fit to be a police officer, you're entitled to a line of duty disability pension, which is why the board gave it to him. Those injuries were incurred in emergency responses, both rescuing somebody from the river, as well as effectuating an arrest, as well as the earlier injuries that were the basis for his initial disability pension. Historically, these did not always come to city council. It just happened because the statute says, if this, then benefit. Some cities have taken the position in the last 10 years that, wait a second, we're talking about something, and the council could look at it and say, no, it was not incurred in response to an emergency. Frankly, the litigation on that is not looking very good, and that's currently in litigation. Litigation revolving about what actually constitutes an injury that is in response to emergency tends to side with the employee, not the villages and the cities. Classic example is a firefighter that was in a training, not an emergency response, not rescuing somebody, and obviously not arresting somebody, got injured during the training, and the city said, no, we're not giving you the benefit. It wasn't incurred in response to an emergency. He sued the city and won because the appellate court said, well, one of the hoses wasn't working right, and he could have deemed that to be an emergency, so give him the benefit. My recommendation at this point, ours is a lot more clear-cut than that one. He got hurt while effectuating an arrest, would be to award the Public Safety Employee Benefits Act benefit to Brandon Parker in light of his most recent pension disability.
Do we have a motion to that effect? Motion by Alderman Porter. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Alderman Stevens. Any discussion? Alderman Snow?
So what is the financial liability to the city over and above if he just retired? Just curious, generically speaking.
If it had been just straight retirement, he would have been able to stay on the city's, actually, I don't know, because I think he's got 20 years in. I'd have to check, to be honest with you. If he was able to retire, pull the pension, has 20 years in, he'd be entitled to stay on the city's insurance plan at the employee rate until he's 65 years old. It would not cover dependents, though, or his spouse. But
so
this is a state statute. We're stuck with it.
And so when it comes to the spousal, they have to reach 65, or it ends when he reaches 65?
When they reach 65.
So their coverage would continue, even he could be 68, they would finally get to 65, and then it would cease.
Correct. His current spouse is young. I'm not sure if she's already younger, but yes.
And in that regards, at this point, he cannot gain employment with another police agency. Is that correct?
Within the state of Illinois, that's correct, and I don't even think he could do outside of the state. He can have other employment, but he is on a disability pension from the police force, so that's correct.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else? If not, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. All right, item D, sale of Belvedere Police K-9 Frank Sinatra.
Thank you, Your Honor. If you would turn to the memo in your packet, request to approve the contract sale of Belvedere Police K-9 Frank Sinatra on Monday, May 3rd, 2021. As you just heard from Attorney Drella, the Belvedere Police Pension Board voted to place K-9 officer Brandon Parker on a duty-related disability pension. Belvedere Police Department assigned K-9 Frank Sinatra, otherwise known as Frankie, to K-9 handler Officer Parker. Officer Parker has requested to purchase 3-year-old German Shepherd K-9 Frankie for $5,000. Police Department contacted FM K-9, which is a K-9 training facility out of Michigan, where we purchase and train our K-9s, and spoke with the master trainer, Mike McHenry, to see what our options were for Frankie in terms of whether we could trade him in, rotate him to another handler, find another department that may need a K-9. McHenry said that he had hand-selected Frankie specifically for Officer Parker due to Officer Parker's experience and ability. McHenry said he didn't believe another handler had the ability to control Frankie's drive and wouldn't be skilled enough to maintain the obedience and proficiency necessary to certify in aggression, obedience, or narcotic detection. I will qualify that with another handler on our department, because he's responsible for training our handlers as well, so he's very familiar with their expertise and criteria or qualifications. McHenry said due to Frankie's age, his drive, and the fact that he had a couple teeth pulled, he wouldn't have the value to another department, nor would he be willing to take him in on trade towards a new K-9. Based on this information, I would recommend selling K-9 Frankie to Officer Brandon Parker and approve the contract between the City of Belvedere and Brandon Parker. I would request a motion to authorize the sale of Belvedere Police K-9 Frank Sinatra to Brandon Parker for $5,000 and waive the 2-week layover requirement for the ordinance authorizing the sale.
Do we have a motion to that effect? Motion by Alderwoman Franks. Do we have a second? Motion by Alderwoman Mohal. Any discussion? Further discussion? Alderwoman Freeman?
So Shane, we also have Shep down, and now we won't have Frankie. So how soon can we get a new K-9? Because now we don't have any. And how much is that going to cost us?
The last time we purchased a new K-9, it was roughly $12,000. That was a few years ago, probably 3-4 years ago. I would estimate we're probably still looking at a price tag of about $12,000 to $15,000 because the new handler, I would anticipate, would be a brand new handler and would need additional training as well. The caveat to that would be if somebody that was a previous handler wanted to put their name in the hat. That would be something that we would have to take into consideration, but we don't have that information at this point. The time frame would be the time it would take us to post for the position, which is roughly 10 days. We would do an interview process and then make our selection on which handler to pick. If it would be a new handler, we're looking at several months for the dog and handler specifically for training. And then there would be rotating the new handler and K-9 back to the road for on-the-job training. But if it was a previous handler, that training would be considerably less. It would be more just the handler getting acquainted with that specific dog. So, but I don't necessarily have that time frame, maybe roughly in half. So maybe a month or so.
Go ahead.
So you're going to be coming to council to authorize a purchase of a new dog here real soon, you think?
Yes, that would be our goal, to get before council and give you that information as soon as possible. I have had conversations because I don't know if council remembers previously, we've had a great deal of support for not only the department but the program where people have provided donations. I've had those conversations started already, and we do have people that are willing to provide donations. Whether or not we're able to fund the entire amount of, a new dog and handler, I don't know yet. But we'll definitely do what we can to alleviate the cost to the city.
Alderman Porter?
Hey, Chief, I know we talked earlier about this. One thing I was going to say, I'm assuming that the $5,000 that we're taking in from Officer Parker would go towards the new dog. Is that correct?
Well, and that would bring us up to
Yeah, that'll be next on the
agenda
agenda.
item
so
E.
We'll answer that next on the agenda item. But for now, just the authorization, to sell Frankie for $5,000 and to waive the 2-week layover at council level then is what we have in front of us now. So, any other discussion regarding that? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so item E, item E, then Alderman Porter answers your question, I think. We have the request for orthopedic surgery for Belvedere Police K-9 Shep. Chief?
If you could turn to your memos in the packet for request to approve orthopedic surgery for Belvedere Police K-9 Shep. On January 25th, 2021, the council approved an expenditure for K-9 Shep to have his right cranial cruciate ligament surgically repaired. The surgery and rehabilitation have been successful at restoring Shep's use of his right hind leg. However, compensation of the left hind leg during rehabilitation is caused, according to UW Veterinary Care, the left cranial cruciate ligament to rupture. UW recommends a surgical repair of the left hind leg ligament. This surgical repair is the same as previously brought to the council. Therefore, I'd use the same cost comparisons as previously researched for the January 25th request. Veterinary Specialty Center of Buffalo Grove estimated their cost for this type of surgical repair between $4,600 and $5,100, excluding rehabilitation. UW Veterinary Clinic estimated the cost of surgery to be between $3,400 and $4,000. Based on the statement provided by UW Veterinary Clinic after Shep's first surgery, their cost for that surgery was approximately $3,600, including a working dog discount of 20%. If surgery is approved, Canine Shep would have to undergo rehabilitation at Rehab Companion Animal Specialty and Emergency Hospital with an estimated cost of $450 to $800. I would request a motion to authorize surgery and rehabilitation for Canine Shep in accordance with the medical plan not to exceed $4,400. The Belvedere Police Department requests the use of the funds received for Canine Frankie to cover the costs of surgery and rehabilitation.
Okay, so there we have the rest of the story. Do we have a motion to that effect? Motion by Alderwoman Franks, second. Second by Alderman Porter. Discussion. Alderwoman Franks.
After the surgery on both legs, do you think this would be a good time to retire him? Or do you think it would be risky to put him back on the force?
No, and I rely on the conversations that I have with canine handler Reese, who believes that based off of the rehabilitation of the right leg and how strong that leg has become, that he feels, and part of this is information that he'd received from UW Veterinary Clinic as well, that Shep should be good to go after this second surgery, and it wouldn't be uncommon for him to continue throughout the rest of his service career. The only issue we might be looking at going forward would be inflammation of the joints, which can be mitigated with medication, but with inflammation, you just never know how it's going to progress, and it's something that is going to have to be monitored along the way.
Alderwoman Freeman.
Thank you.
Then
So,
Alderman Porter.
I think that it indicates that his left leg was injured by overcompensation from the injury on the right leg. So once he does the left leg, being how the right leg is already compromised from surgery, are you worried that he's going to overcompensate on the right side and re-injure that?
Yeah, the issue we ran into is that the left leg was it was already compromised, but to a much smaller degree. When they originally did the evaluation of the right leg, they had noticed small tears in the left, and had indicated at some point we may be addressing this issue, but nobody dreamed that we'd be addressing it this soon. So no, based off information from the veterinary clinic and the observations that Officer Reese has seen from the right leg, that's not as much of a concern at this point in terms of the right leg, being affected to the same degree that the left leg was.
Alderman Porter.
I was just curious, how old is Canine Shep, and assuming everything goes normal, how long would you say he will be able to remain in service, do you think, just, ballpark?
Yeah, typically we look at roughly 7 years, 5 to 7 years for a working dog is what the canines are considered. because of the surgeries and the potential for arthritis, we may be on the lower end of that. Shep currently is 3 years old, so we're looking at 2 to 4 years.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Does Shep have all his teeth?
Shep does, yes.
Good. Anybody else? Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second then on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Thank you. Item G, I'm sorry, F. The Apollo trenchless, so we have settlement with, agreement with Frankenmuth Mutual Insurance Company. Attorney Drella or Brent, Attorney Drella?
It's on me, I guess, okay. Hopefully, if I would have knocked on it, this might be the last time I have to come to you with a Apollo issue. We all know the history of Apollo. Even those new to the council, I believe, understand that history at this point. And you'll know that we originally settled with the bond company to reimburse us for what we were out of pocket and paying Apollo, and they kicked in a little bit of extra money as well. And I went ahead and filed a claim on Apollo's regular insurance, their casualty insurance, for the damage that they created to Hickory, the Park District property, when they had to try and dig that rescue pit to cover our out-of-pocket expenses in filling that in and taking out the shoring that they put in there. The insurance company has agreed to reimburse us for those out-of-pocket expenses, which then makes us a little bit more than whole with respect to what we paid out to Apollo plus our out-of-pocket expenses in fixing that issue. The settlement agreement only resolves the issue between us and the insurance company. I made sure that we did not waive any claim that we may have against Apollo in the future for their mismanagement of the project, because in the event they sue us for canceling the contract, I want to be able to counterclaim against them. So this preserves our rights with respect to Apollo. It does not influence them at all. Only settles the issue with respect to the damage to the Park District property. My recommendation would be to approve the release and agreement settlement with Frankenmuth Mutual Insurance Company.
Okay, do we have a motion to that effect? Alderman Fleury, second. Alderman McGee, any discussion regarding this? I think it probably goes to show how important it is to make sure that the next candidate that we have out there trenching is qualified, so we're not back in this position. So, all right, Alderwoman Freeman.
Thank you. So, this hole has already been repaired, and was it a permanent repair?
Yes, as you'll recall, as part of the settlement that we did with the bond company, we agreed to fill the hole, remove the shoring that was in there. The owner of the shoring came and picked it up, and we filled the hole and have seeded it. So it is permanently repaired that we did after we kicked Apollo off the site effectively. And this compensates us for the cost of renting the front end loader that we used to pull the shoring out, as well as the transportation of the front end loader.
And so then the Park District is satisfied with that repair? They're not going to be seeking any further damages from the city?
That one I'll defer to Brent.
The only thing we have left to do for the Park District is there are some trees that were removed to allow us to make that excavation. So we need to plant some trees in there, and we're withholding doing that until the project is finally completed. The Park District has indicated that if such an excavation is needed the second time around, that they will allow that to happen again, depending on the circumstances. But we have received that permission from the Park District. So we do have some tree work to put back in, but we want to wait until the project is completed and the Park District is acceptable of that.
Yeah. Very good. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, so regarding, we have a motion and a second regarding the settlement agreement with Franken Multh. One says Muth and one says Multh. Mutual Insurance Company.
That's
All-
because I do my own typing.
All those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passed. And item G, I would like to go into executive session to discuss pending litigation pursuant to Section 2C11 of the Open Meetings Act. And I would entertain a motion to go into executive session. Alderman Snow, second. Alderman McGee. We'll have a roll call vote.
Brereton,
Aye.
Flurry,
Aye.
Frank. Freeman,
Aye.
McGee,
Aye.
Mulhall,
Aye.
Porter,
Aye.
Prather,
Aye.
Ratcliffe. Oh, Snow.
Aye.
I need a new sheet. Snow,
Aye.
Stevens,
Aye.
10 in favor.
And let the record show that we went into executives. Oh, no?
Can you give me a moment? Let me get us
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.